from Lindblom Math and Science Academy in Chicago, Illinois. Good morning, everybody. Let's hear it from the balcony here at Lindblom. Thank you so much, teams. Now, we just finished watching the national broadcast for this year's challenge, Into the Deep, for First Tech Challenge, and we are so excited to share with you all of the things that you are going to be able to do this season. Now, what we're doing right now is we are talking to all sorts of First Tech Challenge students all over the state of Illinois, and we have an opportunity for you to send in any questions you have about this year's game to our head referee for the state of Illinois, Kat Svoboda. We've got a QR code. That QR code should be coming up on our stream shortly, and if you scan that QR code, you'll be able to ask any questions you might have if you are watching this stream remotely. If you're here in person, we've got Ryan up in the balcony able to take your questions, and we're going to do our best to alternate questions from the stream and from here in person. So you can go ahead and start putting those questions on into the form and getting started formulating anything your team wants to know, especially if there's anything you want us to look at more closely down here on our playing field. With that, just a few housekeeping things. We are recording this, so if you would like to check out these answers later, you'll be able to do so on the First Tech Challenge in Illinois YouTube page. And with that, our head referee has prepared some opening remarks and reminders for all of our teams. So let's give it up one more time for Kat, everybody. All you.
Thank you, thank you. So, yet again, my name is Kat Svoboda. I'm the head referee here in the state of Illinois. I'm going to start out by providing some information and trying to answer your questions. I want to let everyone know that while I have seen this manual before today, I have not had a ton of time to take a look at it. So, what that means is that I am not the expert. I'm not the expert today. I hope to be down the road. I also hope you all are experts in all the rules and what's in the manual as we reach our events. How do you become an expert in all the rules and how to play the game? You read the manual. There's no shortcuts, unfortunately. So we do need you to read the manual. I recommend you break it up amongst your team and make sure at least somebody on your team has read every section. There's some fun ways to do this. Quiz your teammates, make a cheat sheet, all those kind of things. Present on your section. These are all really important things. But the easiest way to do well in this game is to have read the manual and understand it. The manual, if you've seen, who has seen the preliminary competition manual? It was posted in July. Anybody? A couple hands. It's one of our coaches, so I know he's seen it. It's been out there. It has robot build rules and electrical rules there. I strongly recommend you go hunt down the competition manual on the Game and Season page and go ahead and dive into it, read it. There are some hidden treasures in the competition manual. The formatting has changed substantially from previous seasons. What does that mean? Well, it means it's going to look a little bit different. But I also want to point out a lot of rules you may be used to that you're like, oh, we've always done this way. This has always been a rule. You should go double check that. There's a lot of things that have changed. So, that being said, when I talk about sunken treasure, the word yeet is in the manual. I did not put it there. I'm not endorsing it, but the word yeet is somewhere in the manual. Go find it. Other things. You can bring a tablet or a phone to your match. You cannot use it to contact the outside world, but you can use it to help plan your strategy and communicate with the other drive teams. So, we're not necessarily getting more restrictive. Some things might have opened up. So I recommend you read. Also in there, there's more motors you can use this year. There's more servos. There's more batteries. I strongly recommend you take a look at those because it might make your life a little bit easier. Also, some things have changed if you've noticed in the presentation. Autonomous has been truncated. It's just auto now. We're also moving from driver control period to teleop. This is more in line with FRC and makes everyone's lives a little bit easier when we say the wrong word. Hopefully we're all using the same vocabulary now. Additionally, you might have noticed there's no official in-game now. We will talk a little bit about that more, but in-game is not an official term this season. Additionally, you should look at the definition of all the words that are defined in the glossary at the back of the manual. There's a lot of words that maybe are not as defined as they have been in the past, so double check that, and also use context clues for undefined, unofficial words. So, I was going to ask some questions, but nobody seems to have read the competition manual. So, I'm still going to ask, are we using alliance markers this season? No. Did we use alliance markers last season? Yes. We are not using them this season. So, my robot here needs to take off her alliance markers. What are we using this year? Anybody? Robot signs. This is a legal robot sign. It has your alliance color as the background, and it has your team number. It's robust. When I drop it, it's not breaking. What color can your team number be? White and white only. So now, my robot is outfitted for the game this season. Anything kind of funky, we're not going to let fly. Make it easy to read. That is the name of the game this season on your robot numbers and alliance signs. Sorry, team signs, robot signs. We'll get there on vocabulary. So, there are specs in the manual. Go read them. It's going to be a lot clearer than me telling it to you and trying to remember it in the future. So, there's a minimum height to the letters, there's a minimum stroke to the letters, there's a minimum outline where we have to see the red outside the numbers or the blue outside the numbers. Please, please, please go in and read that section. Make sure you create robot signs that are legal and will pass inspection. Additionally, there should be a template on the game and season page, either today or shortly thereafter, that you can use to create your robot signs. I recommend you laminate them or you do something else to preserve them and make sure that they don't get trampled. And I do recommend you mount them very securely to your robot, okay? Other rules come into play, like if we cannot identify your robot, you might get a warning or a card. We're not a big fan of that. All right. I'm double checking my notes because I have a lot of notes. So, also, if you read the preliminary manual, go back and read those sections again. They may have changed on official release today. Okay? I know some of them have changed, so double check and read those sections again. We are going to talk a little bit about the manual. There's a release today. This is not the rules set in stone. What's happening this year is instead of the manual being pretty firm and unchanging, and there being Q&A that actually trumps the manual, we are using the Q&A as a tool to update the manual. There will be bi-weekly updates of the rules in the manual, and there will be a update sheet that tells you what changes were made. It'll have highlights of new words, strike-throughs of old words, and it'll drive your eye to the things that have changed. Please sign up for the emails to get the team updates. These are on the game and season page where everything is. You should go take a look at that. So it'll help you stay up to date on the latest and greatest rules. The competition manual is the ultimate authority. It is the ultimate authority over me. It's the authority over the Q&A, and it is the authority over any other source of information. If you're getting it off of social media, asking your friend, asking your coach, whatever it may be, the competition manual, the words there matter the most. Okay? Also, in terms of things that are changing, we're not doing penalties this year. We're excited about that, right? Welcome to fouls. So, same thing, different word. Okay? So, there are still penalty points for violation, but we are calling them fouls. So please pay attention to that. Read. If you're searching for where the penalties are at, maybe search for the word foul instead of penalty. I'd also check if you are a prescription glasses wearer, double check the rules around safety glasses. If you have questions about them, ask them. Please use the Q&A, please ask questions, because that is how you will get an answer and how you might be able to influence some of the change that will be happening in the manual. Tournaments. I'm going to briefly touch on tournaments. We are not doing tournaments until February. When we get to tournaments, it will be different than what you have seen. What you have seen is best 2 out of 3 kind of bracket. It will now be a double elimination bracket. The size of our tournament and the size of the number of teams that are going into elimination or playoff rounds is going to be determined by the number of teams at the event. It's very clearly laid out. It might be 4 alliances, it might be 6 alliances. It really depends on how large our events are. So I recommend you take a look at that section as we get closer to our tournaments so you can plan appropriately. And I'm also going to just tack on there, also the number of awards given will be dependent on our tournament event sizes. So there's more information in the manual. There's a lovely little table on that. So take a look at that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about robot construction. If you noticed in the animation, there was a rule that we have not seen in the past in FTC. It is a robot expansion limit. So it means that even though my robot has started in size, it needs to stay in a certain size limit. I'm going to do this close to the field, hopefully. So if my robot is here and I have some expansion that's happening on either side, as long as I'm within my 42 inches, I'm okay. All of my expansion has to happen with the robot in one relative location within our expansion limit. So, for example, I could put the robot over here, and I could give it a different kind of expansion, like this. And that's fine. However, if I want to use this sometimes, and also this sometimes, those two things do not both fit inside my box. It would require my robot to move relative to the position in the box to use this expansion. However, if I had a smaller expansion, I could use it with this expansion as well. They both fit inside our box. There's no vertical limit on expansions, but you should watch out on how it gets there. If it has to go this way to go that way, you are expanding outside your limit. Please be cognizant of this as you're building your robots. I also very strongly encourage you to ask questions about it in the Q&A and get clarification that is official and possibly drive some change on some of the wording that is in the manual to help clear it up for you. That being said, there are a lot of pictures and diagrams on robot expansion that are in the game manual under our 104, and I suggest you take a look at those. All right. I have a bunch of stuff about the game. Do you want me to dive into my game stuff, or would you like to get into Q&A? Game stuff. Okay, it sounds like I got a lot of questions, so I'm going to let the Q&A drive things. If I feel like there's something missing that I would like to inform you about, I will do it at the end, okay? So we're going to get going with Q&A, and if you do have a question, again, we've got Ryan up on the balcony.
We're going to get things started with a very common question that we're getting online. 3 different teams have asked, how many samples can a robot carry at any given time?
A robot may carry a maximum of either 1 sample or 1 specimen.
All right, great. An easy win there for a question. All right, so next up, we have a question from Team 12682, the Golden Ratio. They're simply asking, could you go into a little more detail on what's allowed during autonomous?
So, I'm not clear on everything that is allowed during autonomous, as I expect we will get some updates on it. However, during autonomous, the robot may start with a preload, either a sample or a specimen. They can then go around the field. There is no randomization task this season, so they can take that sample or that specimen and score it. At the end of autonomous, there's a potential to also score maybe some other elements as well that start on the field. And at the end of autonomous, there will be points for either parking in your observation zone, which is our kind of trapezoidal feature, or by contacting the low rung. So a level 1 ascend, which is contact with the low rung. Either of those things will get you points at the end of the autonomous period, or auto. I'm working on the vocabulary still.
Next up, we've got a question from somebody here in person.
I'm from Team 23427, Limlum Gold. My question is there a limit on how many specimens can be in the observation area?
I have not seen a limit on how many samples or specimen can be in the observation area at a given time. So that might be something that changes over the season, but as of right now, I see no limit on the number of samples or specimen in the observation zone at any given time.
And that was a great question because we also had that question coming in from online as well. Let's have another question from somebody here in person.
I'm from Team 25893, and I was wondering what would happen if a specimen went into the basket, as it's not labeled how many points it would earn in the rulebook.
Right, so you were paying attention during the video, which is when we are scoring in the basket, our samples are scoring in the basket and the net zone, but not our specimen. It will not be worth any points. So that's at least what I've seen so far, is that if we were in a bit of a hurry or got confused, something like that, that would just be no points.
Great. Next up, let's do a question from online. This is Team 8698 Guilford Robo Vikings. They're asking, can your robot touch the lower bar while it is hanging from the higher bar at the end of the game?
It needs to be fully supported by the upper bar. I really suggest reading the fine levels of the words and staying up to date with any changes on whether maybe incidental contact with the low rung is allowed. However, as of right now, I'm a little unclear on that. But I would suggest, to avoid any problems, you are not contacting anything else. It does need to be support from the second rung. I know incidental contact with other parts of the submersible, such as the side, is allowed, but make sure your support is coming from the upper rung.
And while we're on the topic of those rungs, another question, this one from Team 6200, Despicable Machine. The game manual says we can't contact the ground while going for the high rung for hanging. Does this mean that we need to go on to the low rung first?
Yes, it does. So you need to achieve a level 2 ascent, which is being fully supported by the low rung, before you can try for the level 3 ascent, which is fully supported by the high rung. So you do need to climb or ascend and not just aim for the high rung.
Next up, we'll take a question from somebody here in person.
Hi, I'm from Team 24731. If a robot had a scoop, can it push more than one
Sample or specimen?
Yeah.
So when we talk about robot control, it's still pretty similar to what it has been, which means that your robot controlling elements, so pushing them in a specific direction, is still limited to 1. If your robot is accidentally bumping into them momentarily, then that is not going to be a penalty. I'd also, while you're in the submersible zone, inside the submersible, if your robot's coming in here and maybe accidentally controlling a few, we have a little bit of a grace period to drop some of those and just walk away with our 1, okay?
Excellent. So next up, we have a question online. This is from Team 19168, Totus 1 Tus. It's been a long off season. Can a robot touch or grab the submersible chamber while placing a specimen?
No. So, while placing your specimen, the sample with a clip, onto your chamber, it needs to be done without your robot grasping. The only part of the field your robot should be grasping is those rungs for your ascent, okay?
And while we're on the topic of specimens, a question from Team 10138 Newton Busters, can the human player turn samples into specimens during auto?
I am unclear on that currently. As I've said, I'm not the expert as of today. So I'm not going to answer that, and I'm going to let you ask that in the Q&A and get an official answer.
Next up, let's get a question from somebody here in person.
I'm from Team 23427, and I was wondering, does the human player have completely free control over specimens and samples inside of the human player zone or not?
Okay, so there's no human player zone this season, which is kind of nice. So your human player will be able to stay in the alliance zone with the other drive team members. You're not on the other side of the field or anything like that. So you could be anywhere as a human player. You could be anywhere in your alliance station. What you can do is you are free to manipulate any of the elements that start between the alliance station and your observation zone. So any of these clips or any of these samples. If your robot is preloading, this is where your preload samples or specimen come from, not from anywhere on the field, but from your own human player station. So if you would like to maybe create some specimen, destroy some specimen, make them samples, anything like that, you can handle as many of those as you would like at any given time. You do need to be careful. So the robot should be delivering samples to the observation zone. Human players should be grabbing them when there's no robot in the observation zone, and then changing them into specimen. Preferably not in the field. So ideally I'm a robot. I've moved this here. Now I'm a person. I reach in. I'm doing the creation of a specimen over here, outside the field. and then putting it in. So you can also do that with anything that started over here. Okay? Does that make sense, or do you have anything else? Okay.
We're all good. Thank you. So next up from Team 8907 Blue Box Bots, what happens if the team sign falls off during a match?
The first instance is a warning. If it happens again and it is at a point where we cannot determine who your robot is, which you could do through other means, but help us out with a standardized sign, it is a yellow card if we cannot determine what your robot is. So please get creative in your design of your robot and make sure we know who you are through your own side panels, the colors you choose, those kind of things. Those are all really helpful ways for us to help keep track of who is who. The biggest reason why there's an emphasis on this is when I see two robots maybe getting in a tangle with each other, and I cannot tell who is red and who is blue because their markers have fallen off, it makes our job really hard to try and call a defensive penalty. So it's in your best interest to be well identified and be well identified what alliance you are on. So build those signs robustly, build them very clear, and make it obvious to us who you are.
All right, next question. That is from Team 10138 Newton Busters. And it seems like you touched on this a moment ago, but just to get some clarification, is there a limit to how many samples that you can have in that human play zone at any given time?
So as far as I'm aware, and double check this, stay up to date with the updates, there's no limit to how many samples or a specimen can be in the observation zone, which is inside the field. And I'm not aware of a limit as to how many elements could be outside the field in the Alliance station or zone. So I'm not aware of any limit on either one of those.
Excellent. Next up, another question from Team 10138 Newton Busters. How many samples can fit in each basket?
25 if perfectly stacked vertically. 30 if you're starting to go over the edge of the basket. I'm not going to do it in this moment. Horizontal is not as efficient. You get like 18 to 20. So vertically, perfectly kind of positioned, 25. I kind of knew this question was coming, so I did it a couple days ago to make sure I knew. Are you going to get there with the robot vertically? It's really fiddly to get that many in. So, and then 30 is kind of like a little bit of an overflow situation, but they're all pretty secure on there. Okay?
I'm from CBOTS. I don't know our number. My question...
Closer.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
My question is this. So for the specimens, and when you're trying to put them into either the area below the boxes, would you be allowed to just stack up a bunch of them right there and then just maybe have someone push them in? Or would they have to pick them up one at a time?
Okay. So I'm going to tackle one part at a time. So if you have a specimen with the clip, it's not going to earn you any points in a basket
I'm not saying with the
or
clip.
in the net zone. We want it to be the samples. Okay?
Sorry,
So
I mixed them up.
no clip.
Yeah.
If your robot is placing them one by one, that's fine. You can pile them up. And if, say, you're pushing or something else, and you are then moving some already scored samples, that's fine. As long as they've already been scored and counted as scored, that's fine. You need to be careful if there's a sample maybe just outside the net zone that's not legally scored yet, and you come in with another one and you score both. You should be careful about that. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And they can get piled up As long as they're either supported by the floor or another element, they will get scored.
All right, next question. This is from Team 26463 Hero. There's been a lot of talk about changes to the manual. They're wondering, when should we expect the manual to stop changing?
So, the updates will be bi-weekly. This will continue basically until the first championship. There will be an official announcement of, like, if you're going to first championship, the first championship manual will come out on this date. It should give you a week or two with that final manual. However, here in Illinois, which is where most of our teams will compete, we have a long season going from November through early March, and it will always be updated. If we're looking at an update, it will be happening on Thursday at noon Eastern. So you have a afternoon and another day to digest before our typically Saturday or Sunday meets or tournaments. So if there is one update to the manual coming out the week of your event, the latest update that comes out Thursday will apply unless they say otherwise, and that will hopefully be Thursday noon that release comes out. Again, sign up for those updates so you get update it as soon as the release is made. Okay?
Our next question is from Team 15410 Welded Warriors. They're wondering, what is the vertical expansion limit?
There is no vertical expansion limit. So, as written, I'm going to come over here to our lovely, fully functional real robot. So, there is no limit. I would say maybe keep it reasonable. Think about how you're getting to whatever height you're getting to. If you need to get there, and if you're going to accidentally expand outside, if you accidentally expand outside the limit while getting there, so pay attention to that. So for example, if this was a giant arm that folded up, that would be rather large. Also keep in mind that maybe you've designed this to be vertical, but your robot tips over.
Oh no!
And you might be outside your limit when it's not, your robot is not in its normal position. So the horizontal limit stays with the floor. The vertical limit also stays with the floor. So especially while you're doing things you intend to do, like ascending, try to pay attention to those limits. Maybe ask some questions about falling over online and see if we can get an official update as to how seriously we're going to take a robot that ends up falling over and taking up all the space. Okay?
All right, our next question is from Team 16751. They're the Polytechnic puzzle pieces. They're wondering, can the human player reach in with both hands to grab two samples, put clips on them, and then replace those two specimens in the observation zone?
I have not seen a rule that prevents that. But hang out and check out the updates. Maybe there will be rules that are added. Maybe not.
Sensing a common theme here. Our next question, coming from Team 5037 Got Robot. They're wondering if they can drive under the submersible.
So, your robot can enter the submersible, either with a appropriately sized extension, or maybe with a little bit more of the robot. However, if a robot is ascending, the ascent cannot start from inside the submersible. You must be in the ascent zone. So you must be starting from the outside primarily. I think there's a little bit of an exception if you have something that wraps around your rung. However, the majority of the robot should be starting from the ascent zone outside the submersible. I will also say, keep in mind my robot is a little bit short, a little bit under 18 inches. So keep that in mind when designing.
And one final note worth knowing that may be difficult to see on stream if you can't see a field in person, but there is probably a 3 to 4 inch metal rung all around the base of the submersible. You wouldn't be able to easily just drive right under there.
Yeah, that's where my trouble was coming in. So yeah, there's a barrier around the bottom. It helps keep our samples in and kind of makes it a little bit challenging for the robots to get in.
Our next question is from Team 13 to 17, Kodo Dragons. Is there no team prop this season?
There are no team created elements. So there's no prop and there's no team scoring element. So all your creative effort can be put into your robot and robot signs. So if you sense a theme, build good robot signs, please.
We'll go to those in person here at Lindblom for our next question.
Hello, I'm from Team 24731 again, and I had a question about if a robot can grab any specimens from any of the the left or the right and the back and front, or does it only the back and front?
In the submersible?
If it can only grab from the white tapes.
So let me try and answer this. Let me know if I'm off. But your robot can access under the submersible from any direction to collect your samples. You can also access your alliance colored samples. You should not be controlling your opponent's alliance samples. But you can access any that start on the field or the neutral ones that start on the field. That's all fine. And then the other thing I think you might be asking about is when you make the specimen, you can make them in a few different ways. So the clip can go on a few different ways. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I had another question. Can our robot be inside collecting specimens?
Inside the what?
Inside the submersible?
The robot, there's nothing that prevents the robot from going inside the submersible, but you cannot start your ascent from inside the submersible. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm from Team 25893, and I have a kind of a follow-up to that question. Does a level 1 ascent also count as climbing during inside the submersible?
Does it count as what?
Climbing. Can you just touch it without getting off the ground? Does that not count while inside?
Right. So your ascents, where your robot can be at the end of the match is parked or in ascent. So parking is in your observation zone. You're not going to get anything in your net zone for parking. So have your robot over here, or it can be, so parking and the level 1 ascent are both good for auto points. Parking, level 1, level 2, or level 3 ascent are good for at the very end of the match.
Yes, I agree. But for the not being allowed to climb inside the submersible, does just touching the bar level 1 ascent count as climbing, or do you have to be outside just to touch it for the teleop endgame?
My understanding is that any ascent needs to be outside.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe ask those questions in the Q&A. I'm going to keep telling you to look at the official Q&A and maybe get some better clarification.
All right, so we've got a lot of questions online here. I'm going to ask a couple that kind of have yes or no simpler answers here so we can get through a couple. So this question's from Team 24300 PND 4-leaf rovers. Are the colored blocks randomly thrown in the center section?
I'm not going to say thrown, but placed. They should be random. There should be no bias that all the blues are on the blue side and all the reds are on the red side. It should kind of look like a mixed up jumble of sprinkles or something, as far as I'm aware. So,
All right, another question here from Team 24755, Eagle Robotics Doesn't Works. Are there any limitations to how a sample or specimen is picked up?
Don't damage it. Please don't damage it. That's about it. Don't damage things. Double check on that. Make sure you're not destroying things, marring them, those kind of things. But direction-wise, style of gripper, whatever you're using, just make sure it's not chewing up our plastic pieces.
Another kind of simpler question here from Team 10836, Stemperfy. Can the human player remove a clip from a specimen in the observation zone to turn it back into a sample?
I have not seen anything against it. Again, that might be a good Q&A question. I don't know if that's the best strategy, but maybe something happens and your specimen score ends up breaking and you really want to score your samples. It's all plausible, but I don't know if that's my strategy. I'm not playing this game though, so I'm just refereeing it.
And now a question from Team 25677, Robo Genies. Are we allowed to start with a specimen or a sample before auto?
Yeah, so when you are starting your match, your robot is properly sized within your 18-inch sizing cube. They can be anywhere along the wall, touching the wall, except in the observation zone. We don't want that. And not in the net zone either, under the basket. You are allowed to preload either one sample or one specimen. So when we say preload, we are just talking about contact with the robot. So that would be a good preloaded sample for my robot. Was there something else about? I think those are the big things on our starting configuration. I'm double checking. Stay in the field. So, and your preloads are coming from kind of your human player stash here, not from our submersible. We all have a tendency of grabbing out of here. This is not the place. Grab from your own human player station. All right.
Let's go to an in-person question here.
During a third level ascend, are you allowed to be touching the second rung?
I think this was also asked earlier. I'm not you have to be fully supported by the rung. There might be some allowed incidental contact with other parts of the submersible, including the side or a lower rung, but I would double check on that and make sure that if you have a question that's not answered by the current words in the manual, you go ask that question and let's make sure we have a firm answer. Okay?
We've got a couple questions here related to clips that aren't attached to samples. So, a question from Team 12682, The Golden Ratio. Is the human player able to just place clips into the observation zone without attaching them to a sample?
I don't know if I've seen a rule that says you blatantly can't. It won't get you anything. If you're trying to use elements to make the game harder for other people, there will be penalties or fouls. Doing something like scoring just a clip does not get you anything. That is not going to earn you any points. So I would only find that troublesome and not in any way helpful to just place clips in the field.
So following up to that question, this is from Team 14204, Super Scream Bros. May the robot control a clip without it being part of a specimen?
There is no specific control limit for an individual clip. So for example, if you had just a clip and a sample and you were controlling both those items, as far as I'm aware, that would not get you a controlling too many elements penalty, but you should ask these questions in the Q&A because maybe there's some refinement to occur to the rules.
All right, talking a little bit more about samples here. We have a question from team 16277 Techon. Can a robot collect more than one sample at a time from the submersible?
If they want vowels, yes, they can. While in the submersible, your robot perhaps accidentally controls 2 elements at a time. And as long as that control is momentary and reversed, they can leave with 1. However, there's still a control limit of a maximum of 1 sample or specimen. That applies everywhere on the field for your robot and in all match periods.
While we're on the topic of samples and the submersible, from Team 25677 Robo Genies, is the entire robot allowed to go inside the submersible to pick up samples?
I think this is like the 3rd time we've had this question. I have not seen anything that says you cannot take your entire robot inside. There is a lip. It is height restricted. So design appropriately. You cannot start your ascent from inside the submersible. You can go in there, as far as I'm aware, to drive through, pick up samples. Not sure what else you would be doing in there. I don't know, having a party. But yeah, you can go in as far as I am currently aware. Again, stay tuned for updates and see if anything changes.
Next up from Team 10836 Stemper Phi, is there a foul for handling the other team's samples?
Yes. Controlling the opponent samples or specimen is a foul. So please do not. Incidental contact, plowing, those sorts of things will not result in a foul, but controlling it actively will.
Next up from Team 11392 Defenestration. Can a sample be scored in a basket if the robot is still holding on to it?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So they're saying, can a sample be scored in a basket if the robot is still holding on to it?
I believe that if these words aren't there, they will shortly show up that things are not scored until your robot lets go of it. Or there's just incidental contact. If that's not clear in the rules currently, please ask that question and get that clarified, whether or not it will count as scored if your robot is still in control of it.
Another question here from 12682, the Golden Ratio. Is there a line, like last year, that an Alliance's robot can't cross during auto?
So we've continued to have our tiles in a grid system. So I'm currently in column A, B, C, D, E, F. I think that's 6. Okay, so if my robot is on the red alliance, I put her on the wrong side of the field, sorry y'all. If they cross the midline, so past the 3 tiles on their side, and contact something that started completely on this side of the field while it's still completely on this side of the field, such as an opponent robot, a sample, things like that, my red robot is at fault and there will be a penalty. So if there are 2 robots that both cross the line a little bit and they both end up in a little bit of a tangle while they're both partially across the line, there's nobody at fault necessarily, but if your robot crosses and contacts either a robot or a sample that started completely on the other side of the field, there is a foul for that. So
I think we have a question here that's about a situation where maybe one of those baskets are a little overfilled and spilling up over the top of the rim. So the question is from team 23-427, Lindblom Gold. If a specimen, these would be specimens on rungs, but if a specimen falls during the game without robot contact by either alliance, would points be deducted?
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about D-scoring in general. So D-scoring could happen if a blue robot moved a sample out of a net zone, if a robot of the Blue Alliance removed a sample out of one of the red baskets, or vice versa. Or it could happen by a robot D-scoring a securely clipped specimen from one of the rungs. If your specimen was somehow very challengingly vaguely clipped on to something and it was hanging by a thread and then got knocked off, that's not going to get a D-scoring penalty if it was very tenuous. It will if it was securely clipped. You will also be looking at a D-scoring penalty if your opponent somehow manages to remove the sample from the clip and you no longer have a specimen. That being said, human players, securely clip your samples to the clip. It is a little bit of a challenge, so make sure you are getting those clicked in.
Next up from online, this is team 24-755, Eagle Robotics Doesn't Works. How tall is the submersible area in the middle?
How tall? The official dimensions are in the competition manual. I'm going to eyeball it for you based on what I have here. It is approximately 36 or 36 and a half inches tall to the top of the rung. Please be aware the official dimensions are in the manual. This is my quick little eyeball while I'm here with what I have right here.
I'm just going to give a shout out here to team 13-217 Kodo Dragons. They had asked a question about specimens being D-scored, but Kat just covered that in her previous response. So hopefully you can go back and listen to that and recognize that your question was answered. So next up, this is from team 13-117 Kodo Dragons as well. How many samples can be put in the human player area?
I'm not aware of the limit on how many samples and or specimen can be in either the observation zone or in the area outside of the field for the human player to interact with. I also had a follow-up on our dimensions here for our submersible. So the barrier is about 2 inches tall. So this little lip on the front and the sides is 2 inches off the ground. So that's the little speed bump you have to get over in order to get into the submersible for those samples.
Question here from team 12-682, the golden ratio. They're saying if their robot is hanging from either level 1 or level 2, and a portion of the robot goes into the air of the submersible, is that okay? So maybe another way to phrase that would be like breaks the plane of the submersible.
Yes. So we are expecting that as your robot started its ascent from the ascent zone outside the submersible, maybe as we're getting up here, there's some swing inside the submersible. That appears to be fine from everything I've read. They are expecting potentially some contact between robots that have ascended to level 2 or 3 on either for blue to maybe accidentally contact red and things. There are some words and some rules around that you might want to read if you might be inside the submersible while you are fully supported by the rungs. But it appears to be legal and fine for that to happen. You just need to start in your ascent zone outside the submersible.
We've got 2 questions here from Team 14204 Super Scream Bros. I think they're having some ideas about a potential way to solve one of the challenges of this game. The first question is, may the robot control multiple clips without them being attached to a sample?
Ask in the Q&A. Currently, I'm not aware of a rule preventing or specifying control of clips. However, ask, because there should be some clarification.
And then the follow-up to that is, may a robot assemble a specimen?
Good luck. The human player's job is to assemble specimen. In the definition of specimen, if you want to look at the glossary, I believe it specifies that it must be a human-created game element. But we could double-check that, and I should have a fast track to our glossary, because reading the manual is important. No, it doesn't specify it's by the human player. Ask in the Q&A and get an answer. Find out for yourselves. Also, good luck. So.
All right. We've got a question here from a team that hasn't submitted a question yet, so let's ask it. This is from Team 19757 Coffee Beans. They're wondering what happens if a sample ends up outside the game field. So, for example, if a robot is trying to place the sample in one of the corner baskets and it accidentally falls out of bounds.
So, part of it is intent. So your robot should not be throwing them out of the field. We will have a discussion or a penalty, a foul, if there's intention and there's samples leaving the field because of bad driving, bad design, something like that. If you are trying to score, from what I'm aware of, there's no penalty if it's kind of incidental. If you also notice, our alliance stations are a bit minimalist here, but there is no alliance station kind of in this first section by the basket, just for our student safety. Team safety is to make sure that if a robot were to leave the field, or maybe a sample leaves the field in this area, nobody's getting hurt by that. So regarding specifics, if you're not seeing an answer in the manual for that specific question, I would recommend you ask it in the Q&A. I'm going to sound like a broken record to y'all, but seriously, please ask questions in the official manner through the official Q&A. And again, the rules may change based on your questions or questions from the volunteers.
A few moments ago, Kat, you showed a specimen being very precariously positioned on its rung, and that led to a follow-up question from Team 25677 Robo Genies. They're wondering, does a specimen have to fully lock on to the chamber to get points?
My understanding is no, it needs to be fully supported by the chamber or by another element fully supported by the chamber. So for example, this would score. However, it will not earn a D-score penalty if red comes up and bumps our submersible due to the precarious nature of that scored element.
Next up, from Team 15256 Techno Knights, how many arms is a singular bot able to have?
You are restricted only by your imagination and the number of motors that you can have on your robot, and probably some electrical controllers. So there is no limit to the number of arms, manipulators, or extensions your robot could have. The limit is on the space it takes up, and the motors and controllers aspect of it. So there's a limit of 8 motors and 12 servos, and I think that's also kind of the space on the expansion hub and everything. So I would recommend you double check that. and make sure that you are not exceeding any of the limits, expansion, or electrical. Okay.
Another question from Techno Knights. How many elements or specimens can we pile up in the corner area?
In the net zone, presumably. Let's see, 60? I don't know. Yeah, I think 60 will fit there. You should not be trying to move the blue ones into, say, if you're red. So there's 80 elements on the field. 60 of them could be yours to control. I think you could easily build a little fort, build a little gold pile out of 60, so 40 yellow and 20 red, 20 line specific ones. So, yeah, you could put 60 in there. Probably more if there were more, there just aren't. So.
One more question from Techno Knights that I can tackle for you, Kat, if you want to grab some water here. They asked, how many samples or specimens can a bot carry at a time? That was one of the first questions we asked, so maybe they joined a little bit later, but a robot can only carry one sample or one specimen at any time, one at a time.
There's one more thing I want to cover if we're getting to the end of the questions. Oh, I see you have one more at least. This is nothing. This is not a sample. This is not a specimen as far as I'm aware. So don't clip to the yellow ones, just clip to the red ones or the blue ones.
All right, a quick question from online, and then we'll grab this one in person. From Team 14204 Super Scream Bros, may multiple clips be attached to a specimen?
Y'all, Super Scream, I don't know what you're doing. You're very clip obsessed. I don't see value in that. I'm trying to think of why you would want to. Besides just like creativity, which I'm here for, maybe not in a match. I'm gonna say, and you'll have the opportunity to play with your field. These are really secure. They're actually kind of hard to get on, like the samples. If you're not clipping them all the way, they can come off, but at least as of now, without beat up parts, these are really secure. And the part that goes on to the chamber is also really secure. So I don't know if there's a ton of value there. Legally, can you put more than one clip on one? There's no penalty for it. I'm just failing to see benefit.
I'm telling you, Kat.
I'm gonna point to the definition, which says that a specimen is made up of a alliance-specific sample and at least one clip. So you could. I'm struggling with that one, guys.
I think they're challenging themselves to prove you wrong about the strategic value of multiple clips on their robot. So that'll be an interesting thing to see this season. We've got a question here in person. Let's go ahead and hear what it is.
From Team 19648, we were wondering about the capability and intent of stretching out beyond the 42-inch boundary, because we understand that you're not supposed to go 42 inches one way and then also like another 42 inches the other way. But if your claw is like, for example, claw is able to go 42 inches to the left and then retracts and then goes 42 inches to the right, is that allowed or is that like restricted?
So there's some good images, so take a look at them. But for example, if you have a robot that has maybe one arm or two, but I'll do this with one, and you're saying it could, go 42 inches to the left, but then maybe it pivots and also goes 42 inches to the right. That is not allowed. Your robot needs to stay in the same relative position when you're making those extensions. So from the one relative position of the robot relative to the box. So if it starts on the left, your extension can only go to the right or forward, whatever direction you're living in. Okay? So the point would be you don't have like one giant pivot arm that goes 42 inches both ways. It would have to be just one, or it would have to be a smaller extension. Also, when we're talking about extensions, please look at putting like physical limits on your robots to make sure that there's a hard stop that prevents it from exceeding the limits. Okay.
We've got another team asking their first question of the Q&A. This is team 19757, We Go Robotics. Can both robots on the same alliance ascend at the same time?
Yes, both robots on your alliance can try to ascend level 1, level 2, or level 3 at the same time. There's a little bit of a tape mark roughly in the middle that kind of gives you a half if you want to try and stay on your half and have them stay on their half. However, that's up to you two to work out amongst yourselves.
Now, I think we have a team here planning about what might happen if everything that could go wrong does go wrong. From team 24755, Eagle Robotics doesn't works. If the robot deconstructs completely, do the points it scored still count?
Yes. I hope you don't deconstruct yourselves on the field by accident or on purpose. But your achievements during the match while you were functioning will continue to score for your team. You will have limited how much you could have scored by your self-destruction or whatever. But whatever was achieved in whatever game period will be scored still.
Then I have team 10836, Stemperfy. They wanted to hear once again your estimate of how many samples can fit in the basket, and they were wondering if a sample needs to be under like the top of the basket to be counted.
Okay, so I'm saying 25 if you stack them vertically and you absolutely optimize them. 25 is how many fit with none of them going below the lip of the basket. The ones that are on top of that, so resting on other elements that are supported by the basket, will still score for you. However, they get a little bit more precarious. I kind of got to 30 comfortably with them kind of like heaped on top. They will score if they, if you've created a little leaning tower of Pisa here. They will continue to score if they are not completely contained within the basket, as long as they are fully supported by the basket and or other samples inside the basket.
Next up, from team 11848, Spare Parts Robotics, how will tiebreaker points work?
Tiebreaker points. They are specified in our ranking. Let me find them. My scroll does not want to scroll with me today. If you haven't seen the competition manual, it's about 142 pages long, so I know that's lengthy, but it's all good information. So your basic ranking points are your win is worth 2 points and your tie is worth 1 point. If you lost a match, then it is not going to go towards your any ranking points. It'll be a 0. So your ranking score, so the average number of ranking points earned per match, so that number will be somewhere between 0 and 2. That is your first order sort. If you're following along in the manual, this is 13.5.3 on page 122. Your second is going to be your average alliance auto points, followed by your average teleop ascent points for your alliance, followed by your highest match score, including fouls. And if you're still tied up with somebody at that point, your final will be a random sort by our event management software.
Great. Before our next question, we've been going at this for over an hour, and we do want to be sure that you all are able to get some up close and personal time with the field. So, for those of you on stream, I am going to be closing the Q&A Google form to submissions in 5 minutes. You've got 5 last minutes to enter those questions into the Google form if you're viewing this on stream. We'll be closing that once again in 5 minutes. So, our next question from Team 10138 Newton Busters. How many specimens can fit on a bar?
How many specimens on a bar? I think you will fit more on if you attach the sample vertically to the clip, but I would suspect you're not going to be terribly limited space-wise. All right, while I'm doing this, do you have anything else?
Not at the moment. I know one question that our MC Corey was really wondering was, what do samples taste like?
What do samples taste like? Oh, I thought you were going to ask how much water goes on the field this year. I have not sampled the samples yet. I do not recommend sampling the samples. If you do, that was not endorsed by anybody in this room. I'm going to say you should be able to get all 20 of your clips onto your 2 chambers here. And just say Or I could be smart. Oh, let's be smart. Oh, that's obnoxious math. Oh. $17 per chamber, if you're really, really good and can pack them in.
All right. Any other questions here in person? Last call for any questions online. We're all caught up with questions, so unless we see any last people asking questions here in person or any last submissions online, we can wrap this thing up. Let's wait maybe another 30 seconds here, see if we get any last people running to ask or entering something online.
Okay. While we're doing that, I probably should hit my disclaimers first, but you guys know the drill, hopefully. This is my best information as of today. I'm not an expert. The competition manual is the expert, and it will continue to get updated. I am not nearly as knowledgeable as I will be later in the season, and I am not nearly as knowledgeable today as you will be later in the season. We know there are updates coming, and there will be clarifications made during the season. I request that you guys help drive some of those clarifications and make sure you are posting in the official Q&A. The official Q&A opens Saturday, I don't know if that's a Saturday, September 16th. And your coach should have one account for you to log in and use on the official Q&A. So please, please, please use that tool, get updates, and get the manual to say the right information and get the Q&A to clarify what you might want to do. Also, if the information you have heard today contradicts something you read in the competition manual later, what you have read in the competition manual in the future is right. If you come back and watch this on YouTube and say, but Kat said this, the competition manual overrules me. So please, please, please go off of what the competition manual said. Also, I might have missed something. I am a human being. It is plausible I make mistakes, so keep that in mind. Is there anything else online?
Team 10138 Newton Busters is wondering why you think the game is called Into the Deep.
Because you need to dive deep into the manual.
Buttons.
And also, it's because there's a lot of water on the field. You haven't seen it. It's here and it's coming. So, if you're on stream right now, we are showing the clipping of the sample and the specimen, which I'm actually going to help out with because I've kind of figured it out.
They are very, very tight to clip. This will take practice with the human player.
I'm also strongly recommending you're using this tab as the side that is getting clipped or unclipped. So don't try and do it the other way. And you better have heard that. It makes a very clear sound when it's good. Okay? All right. Yeah. You're taking either of those. All right.
And with that, we've closed our online form. There's no other online questions, and I see no one in person asking questions. So let's throw it back over to Corey and Kat to close things out on stream.
My closing remarks are read the manual and stay up to date. Please, please, please. There will be changes. It is unlike other years. If you think you know something because it has always been that way, do not assume anything. Please, please, please read the rules. If you have an assumption, you should ask about it. If it is not like confirmed or denied by words in the manual this year, if you've assumed we always bring a cart to competition, I'm going to bring a cart to competition. Double check. Make sure your cart is legal. Make sure you can bring a cart. Whatever it is, please, please, please read the manual and please pay attention to the changes that are made and ask those questions. All right? So I'm going to hand off to Corey here.
Thank you so much, Kat. Give it up for Kat, everybody. She did such an amazing job preparing to read everything ahead of time for y'all. What we are going to do, the very last thing that we're going to do on the stream for you, if you're watching along with us live, we're going to take our camera here at Lindblom and we're going to try to give you a little bit of an immersive tour of the field before we do close out. So we'll get that camera on the move and I will get out of the way so you can get a close look at what we are going to be seeing this season. And if you're hanging out here in the room, you can see it from the balcony already. But we are going to start preparing to get a closer look at the field if you are attending here in person. So in order to do that, what you can do is you can send one team representative to Ryan up in the balcony. He's waving right now. Send one team representative to Ryan, and he's going to make a schedule for live field viewing for our students here in attendance. The way it's going to work is we are going to do shifts of 10 minutes, during which we will allow 3 student representatives from 5 teams at a time to come on over, get a closer look, ask any questions, get some hands-on time with the field. So again, if that sounds fun to you, go check in with Ryan. Meanwhile, on stream, we're still getting a closer look at those rungs and those clips, seeing how they interact on the field. Going to take a look at the corners. Seeing how many of our samples fit in our corners. Very, very nice. And thanks to our camera operation team for getting a quick little swim around our field before we close out our stream. So with that, if you have been watching us live, thank you so much for joining us here at Lindblom. And we look forward to a phenomenal season with all of you. Again, once again, huge thanks to Kat with her deep dive for all of Illinois here on the field. So we'll close out our stream and then we'll talk to everybody else here in person real shortly.